What's up, people of YouTube? I'm Karsatowski and welcome to the Karsatowski YouTube channel. So today we are going to be commentating over one of the most iconic PBA matches of all time, the 2012 US Open. So let's just get on to it. Okay, so this is the title match, and this is against Pete Weber versus Mike Fagan. Mike Fagan was the #1 seed, and Pete Weber had to climb the ladder to get to this point.
As well as he ever has coming into the US Open. He thinks that.
So what a lot of people don't know is that this match had a lot of writing on it other than the fact that Pete Weber was going for his own record. In this match, Pete Weber was trying to become the first player ever to win 5 US Open titles, which before Don Carter and his father Dick Weber have won 4 in the past, but nobody ever won 5. And also, this would have been Pete Weber's 9th major, which would have surpassed Mike Albee and Walter Ray Williams Jr., which would have put him behind only Earl Anthony at this time. But a lot of people know that history. But what a lot of people don't really know is if Mike Fagan would have won this major, he would have become the 2012 PBA Player of the Year. He had already won the Masters earlier this year, and he had made a lot of cashes and match plays, and this would have been his 2nd major of the year and 2nd major in his career, and he would have surpassed Shawn Rash for winning Player of the Year this year, because Shawn Rash had won the Tournament of Champions, and he had, I think, the highest amount of cashes and match plays this year too. But Mike Fagan would have won Player of the Year in 2012 had he won this event.
Masters from Dallas, Texas, the king, Mike Fagan.
10 years on tour at that time.
Fagan's family is on hand to
and Mike Fagan had joined the tour around the time as Shawn Rash and Bill Neal both. And he actually retired from the tour in 2015 and bowled in a couple events in 2016. Hasn't bowled on tour since. He's bowled in a few open events here and there over the last few years, but he really hasn't been much in bowling at all. So the story with Mike Fagan is that he actually he went for his MBA, and I don't really know what he did after that. Like, again, I've seen him in events after he retired from the tour, but I don't really know what he did with his MBA after this. But I think that if he would have stayed on the tour until, I guess, probably now, he probably would have won at least another 4 or 5 titles, I think, and probably another major. And this was his Masters win. And fun fact, this was against Chris Barnes, who this would have been his 3rd runner-up finish of the Masters. And I believe that would have also been Chris Barnes' last step-outer finals in a major, which that's actually kind of surprising, especially 11 years ago, and the fact that Chris Barnes is still a really great player to this day.
come in to get the strike. I'll tell you what, this guy, Mike Fagan, is really impressive.
Yes, so Mike Fagan had a lot of pressure on himself in this match, but also the pressure of bowling against Pete Weber, who's one of the best major champions of all time.
He's going for a 2nd major, back-to-back. Major victories are certainly very possible in the near future for Mike Fagan.
Pete Weber's after that 5th U.S. Open title, something nobody else, even his dad, did not do.
Interesting ball.
I wonder what ball that is that Pete Weber's throwing. I've seen it a few times before, but I can't remember exactly what it is.
Really?
And this was before they would tell you what a bowler's arsenal would be, and before they had strike tracker and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, this was happening the whole match, the whole day. And it continues on to the title match.
It's called sportsmanship, pal.
So I think to this day, only Pete Weber knows for sure who that fan was. So some people say that it was like a 13-year-old kid who was doing that. And I wouldn't discredit that because I don't know myself, but I don't know. I don't see anybody that young at that side unless it's in the front row. I have no idea who that is.
You know what? Just leave it alone. Continue on. Just ignore it. Let's go. Let's move on. Let's roll.
Yeah, Pete Weber has definitely been known for getting distracted by fans and just off-lane shenanigans. Sean Rash is definitely another one who's been known for that, and Sean Rash still absolutely is like that to this day. He had an instance at this year's Masters in match play. It was either qualifying or match play when he had that same instance too. So Pete Weber and Sean Rash are pretty much known for getting distracted and doing something about it, which is actually pretty funny. I've never had that issue personally, but sometimes you just got to turn off the brain to let your body do all the work. Just stand up and execute. But in this environment, it's a lot different when you're in this kind of environment as compared to being in qualifying in a local sweeper or state tournament, that's for sure.
Based on the applause we heard while we were in commercial break, Fagan actually outdrew him.
So Mike Fagan was with track bowling, which I don't see a ton of players on the tour using a lot of track equipment to this day. But he would eventually go to Storm for a while. So I don't know if Mike Fagan went to Storm after track or if he went to track after Storm. But I know he was with Storm Bowling for a little while before he retired. Oh, we got a little pause. Yeah, it's not working.
Everything. He said this is the biggest title in
that was actually really funny. And he has a really good ball reaction in this match.
This week in match play. One.
What a lot of people can learn from Mike Fagan and Pete Weber's game is that both of them have a really loose arm swing. They don't try to muscle it and create a lot of power in the downswing. They just swing the ball, release it freely, and then just release it, and that's how all that power is created. Of course, they keep the hand behind the ball too, which is really one of the most important things, but the fact that both of them have some of the loosest swings in bowling really tells you a lot for your own personal game.
Jason struggled with some really bad pin carry, but again, it's all about the maturation process that Mike Fagan has gone
So
through
at this time of the U.S. Open, how the U.S. Open used to play is that they would use an extremely flat pattern, which would basically require you to be extremely accurate. And if you missed a little bit to the right or to the left, you can leave some really nasty splits, and it was really difficult to string strikes. So like 210 and 220 is a really good average to have in order to beat most players on the U.S. Open. Now how they do the U.S. Open is that they'll have 3 different patterns of all different lengths. And throughout qualifying, they would have them on different conditions throughout the day. So they'll have a squad bowl on a fresh pattern, and then they'll have another squad bowl on a burn pattern. And that's just how the U.S. Open is right now. Personally, I kind of prefer the more flat pattern throughout the whole tournament instead of having 3 patterns throughout qualifying. I feel like that because that made players be a lot more strategic with choosing a line to play and play it, and then to definitely emphasis on spare shooting. Now, I feel like it's almost like bowling something similar to a cheetah, maybe not a cheetah pattern, but something a little bit longer, and then definitely, I kind of feel like that the U.S. Open now has more or less become like a really miniature World Series, when it comes to the multiple patterns, but it's still difficult like the U.S. Open. But I kind of feel like it's better with the flatter pattern. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Should the U.S. Open go back to a more flatter pattern throughout the whole tournament, or should they just stick with 3 patterns throughout the tournament? Let me know. But the guys, the best players who've had the most success at the U.S. Open historically have been the players who have been able to repeat shots and who are able to pick up spares. And it really wasn't until 2020 when Jason Belmonte would win the U.S. Open when a two-hander had actually finally won. And then you had Chris Vi win the next one in 2021, then Anthony Simonson in 2022, and then EJ Tacken in 2023. So over the last few years, a lot of the big power players have really figured out how to win the U.S. Open, which had eluded a lot of them for a lot of years. But I mean, the U.S. Open is still the U.S. Open, and yeah, still probably the most difficult event overall in all of bowling, and that's just a bad break going a touch high. So when it comes to spare conversions, this is probably among the top 5 most difficult spares for a right-hander in my opinion, because you have to be so accurate with sliding that 4-pin into the 9-pin that you can miss it 1,000 different ways and only convert it one way. Right there. He just had at least, that was only about maybe a half a board too high on the 4-pin. That's literally all it was. If he would have been just maybe half a board to the left, he would have had a really good run at that. Barely a good run at it, but he probably would have picked it up if he was at least half a board left.
Fresh off of his first major victory just a few weeks ago at the Masters. Now, how does Mike Fagan rebound from the 4-9 split in the 5th frame?
Fagan trying to win the back-to-back.
Yeah, so Mike Fagan actually had 3 titles at this point. He won his first title, which was a doubles title, I think in 2008 with Danny Wiseman, which was Danny Wiseman's 12th title. And then Mike would win, I think 2 years later against Walter A. Williams Jr. when he would win his first singles title. And then the week prior to this, he won the Masters. And he would eventually win 5 titles in his career. He would win another title after this. And he would win the 2014 World Championship. And then he would retire from the tour a year after winning the World Championship. Which, realistically though, if Mike Fagan would have stayed on tour, I think until like maybe a couple years ago, he would have had almost 10 titles. And he would have definitely been a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. Now, right now, title-wise, he is Hall of Fame eligible, but what he doesn't have is the years on tour, because to be in the Hall of Fame, you have to either have 5 titles in 2 of the majors, like what Mike Fagan has, or you have to have 10 titles in 1 major. But the catch is, you have to have 20 years total on the PBA Tour, which Mike Fagan would be very close with 20 years on tour if he was still on tour right now. So he pretty much would be in the Hall of Fame right now if he was still on the tour. Again, he made other choices, but man, he was literally that close. All he really needed to do was continue to bowl on tour for a few years, and he would have probably made it to 8 to 10 titles in at least 2 or 3 majors, I think. Real interesting. And also, I don't know if you noticed with Pete Weber's ball, I mean, it was only up for like maybe a second, but back then, before 2020, you could actually have balance holes. So like on a ball like Pete Weber, you would have your 2 finger holes that would be for the middle finger and the ring finger, and then your thumb hole. But a lot of players on the tour would have a counterbalance hole, which would usually be right around, so they would have another hole that would usually be like off to the side of the thumb hole, like a couple inches down, or sometimes even on the other side of the ball. That would be to have a little bit more of a consistent roll. And the USBC actually banned this rule in 2020. So now it's just, for a one-hander, it's just 2 fingers and 1 thumb hole. No other extra holes. And for a two-handed player, it's pretty much just these 2 fingers. Unless you actually use your thumb occasionally. Then you could have a thumb hole. But yeah, no more balance holes allowed in USBC competition.
Big bend and got him. Ooh.
That's just something I noticed right there. And Pete and Mike got a really good break there
Well, the last time
to keep himself in the lead.
4-9 split. This time, almost a pocket 7-10. Light squish zone. Ball goes in. Scatters
Look
the
at that.
7, and then the 10 goes out. A little redemption for Mike Fagan on the right lane, and he takes a 10-pin lead.
That's his 4th strike, 2 in a row. Here's another really big. They're all big balls here, but this is a real chance now if he can throw another strike here.
This has pretty much been a close match the whole time. Neither player has taken a really big advantage of the other one throughout this match, but that's what the US Open Finals is all about, really. Not too big high scores for the most part. Just one player strikes and then has an open frame. Another player strikes, has a spare. Both players have a spare. Both players have a strike. Both players double. It's basically, for the most part, matching each other. And that's what the US Open has been like for a long time, and it still technically is to this day. I mean, really the only title match that I can remember over the last several years that it hasn't even been close was last year's US Open when Anthony Simonson won, and partially due to the fact that EJ didn't bowl very well. But that was really the only match that really wasn't even close. But every match of the US Open title match has always been really close. Like this match, really close. 2020, Jason Belmonte had to pick up a bucket in order to win, which is actually what Norm Duke had to win the 2008 US Open. And then in 2021, Chris Vi won by 1 pin. Jacob Buttriff had to strike out to tie, and then he ended up leaving 1 pin behind on his last shot for Chris Vi to win. And then this year, EJ had to double in order to win the US Open. So every match of the US Open has come down to the wire, except for the one in 2022. It was still a good finals overall for Step Ladder Finals, but that title match last year, in my opinion, was just missing something. Mostly due to the fact that it just wasn't very close. And I think that's Pete Weber's first double match too, which he really needed that. Now he's up by 1 pin.
And when I say 3 frames, I mean 9th.
He needed that 11th. One for sure.
Pete Weber strikes out.
Yeah, that was his first double of the match. Mike Fagan already had 2 doubles.
Is 225.
But Pete Weber has kept it clean, which has kept him in this match up until this point. So if Pete strikes in the 9th frame, he'll be up by 11 pins, which will basically force Mike Fagan to get strike in the 9th and all 3 in the 10th to force Pete Weber to get at least a spare and good count
After 3
in
consecutive strikes.
the 10th frame. Great break. And that's the first turkey in this match.
That's a bad man.
Now he's up by 11.
I don't know what else to say. That's just, what a great touch that Weber put on this shot here, along with the last 2 for a 3-bagger. There's that sick rotation.
There you go.
And there's the Pete Weber.
That one went a little bit light, but had some really good carry because of his axis tilt, and also the right ball that he's using.
Now it's up to Mike Fagan. Try and keep himself alive here.
Yeah, Mike Fagan pretty much needs all of them here
Both had 4 strikes
in the 9th and 10th frame. He needs at least a strike in the 9th frame and the first 2 in the 10th frame. That's what he needs.
Focus, focus.
Oh. Again, that's micro adjustments.
Yeah, that was.
That's what it is.
Right there, given the circumstances. That was just a great shot.
Now, he
And
pretty much needs
the
to
last
strike
thing
out in the
Mike
10th
needed to
frame
see was
in order to
an
force Pete
ugly,
Weber
vicious
to
ringing 10 pin.
mark or strike. And this is the part of the match where the heart rate tends to double beats per minute. And even just watching stuff like this, it gets your heart rate up a little bit.
And couldn't get it.
All right, if Mike Fagan strikes out, he shoots 214. Right now, Weber's going at 216.
Yeah, 236 for Pete Weber and 214 for Mike Fagan. So if Pete Weber gets the first strike in the 10th frame, no matter what Mike Fagan does, then he's pretty much going to win.
And misses it to give Norm Duke the U.S. Open title. Now, Mike Fagan needs all three in the 10th frame to make Pete Weber show up in the 10th.
Weber finally looks up, watching Fagan. Can he do it? Yes, he can. Keep the thumb
High flush.
on. Some very pressured bowling going on here in this final. Now he wants to do it again.
Remember, the last three strikes that Weber's thrown have not been picture perfect. In fact, I believe all three have been in the light swish zone area. It's not like it's
Yeah, that is a good point.
Two more strikes here for Fagan. Anything.
So Pete would have to make a slight adjustment to get his ball to finish a little bit better.
He watched the 9th frame. Fagan has to finish the 10th frame.
Because if he doesn't make an adjustment off of the two shots that he's thrown on the lane he's going to be finishing on, actually, he's thrown one shot in the lane he's finished on, so he has to make an adjustment on that right lane to avoid leaving a big split, which definitely can happen.
Getting them when you needed them.
And that's a double for Mike Fagan, but he still needs really good count on this shot to force Pete to throw the first strike and shut him out.
Fagan will finish it up.
Yeah, so that's Mike Fagan's third double of the match.
Fagan's in no hurry to finish this.
No.
You notice how much times?
No.
I mean, he's not doing anything wrong. I mean, as long as he throws this shot within the.
I think that's cool of how they have a camera on top of the ball return. I think that would probably get in my way if I wasn't used to it. If it had a light on it, I think it'd get in a lot of people's way. And that was pretty much about the best shot you can throw to close out that game.
All right, it's simple for Pete Weber.
So he's done what he needed to do. So if Mike Fagan would have struck in the 9th frame, this would have been a different match. But he did what he needed to do in the 10th frame, so it comes down to Pete Weber at this point. Needs 9 spare and strike to win, or the first strike in the 10th frame to win.
On this first ball, Fagan wins.
So at this point, Pete Weber was 49.
Weber taking a re-rack.
No, I was talking about the second five.
So he was about a year away from joining the senior tour, which he would also have a really good career on the senior tour. So it not only adds pressure of living up to your dad's legacy in this event and becoming the second most all-time player in majors, but it also means that you're not going to have that many more chances left to win at 49 years old. That's a good shot. That's the same thing Mike Fagan had on that lane in the 9th frame.
My goodness, what a great shot Weber just threw right there.
So normally a 10-pin isn't too difficult to leave for a player, but when you're in the 10th frame and you have to pick this up, it becomes that much more difficult to keep your emotions in check and to pick up the spare.
Gotta make it.
For the spare, missed one, but not that one.
And now that he's picked it up, a whole brick of weight has lifted off his shoulders, and now he has to get a strike to win.
Sitting on the bench. Excuse me, anything less than 9, Fagan wins sitting on the bench.
And this is one of the most iconic moments in PBA history right here. This is the beginning of it.
Strike to claim it. A strike to claim it.
Perfect. You can't throw it much better than that.
Are you kidding me? That's right. Who do you think you are? I am. Get it right.
Bowling history. The only player ever to win 5 U.S. Opens.
Great bowling this week.
Pete Weber.
Great bowling, man. Great bowling. Nice bowling this week. Brilliant.
And then there you go. One of the most iconic trophies in bowling also. That'd look really good sitting on a trophy case right there, or on your mantle.
This might be the best title of my life. I love it. Mom, what do you think? Dad, I know you're watching too.
So I think now that trophy's even bigger at this point. That's already a big trophy. So a lot of people say that that is probably the greatest match in PBA Tour history. Now, I feel like that the ending of it and all the writing on it probably is the best match as far as the stakes go and the end reaction for Pete Weber and the fact that he pretty much solidified himself as one of the greatest major champions ever. He's certainly top 3 as of right now, but as far as it overall being the best match, there have been other matches that have had more stuff happen to them, you know, like higher scores and more shenanigans involved. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to a single match that has had as much writing on it for both players and for the end reaction to a player winning that event, I think this is definitely the best match in that regard in PBA history. And it's one that we will never forget, ever. And this was 11 years ago when this happened too. And Pete Weber's been retired for 2 years now, and people still talk about it to this day. And every anniversary of this event, it's still on social media somewhere being recognized. Well, so that was the 2012 U.S. Open. And that was actually the 69th edition of the U.S. Open. So this year was actually the 80th edition, if you can believe that. Well, so that's my commentary of that event. So if you guys enjoy this type of content and want to see more of it, then be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any more videos. I'm Karsatowski. Keep watching my content, and I'll see you in the next video. See you guys.